Usually when someone has lost their voice, they are suffering with laryngitis. Or if they've partially lost their voice and it's more raspy, they're dealing with something called dysphonia. Now, these are the physical symptoms of losing your voice and the physical way you lose your voice, where it actually disappears and you can't actually speak because of the biological reasons. But what I'm going to talk about is losing your voice because of the psychological issues that you might be facing. And I'm going to tell you a story about the time that I lost my voice and was unable to express because I was holding back, and the psychological impact of what was going on in my life caused me to actually lose my voice, which I had been using to express for a very long time as an actor. Now, what happens when you lose your voice psychologically is that you no longer are able to speak up. You also have all these fears around being able to speak up and say the things that you actually want to say. And you start blocking your truth. Now, as an actor, you have to be able to speak the truth. The best actors you see are the ones that you believe. And why do you believe them? Because part of what they're saying is the most truthful part of themselves in those given circumstances. On top of that, if you work in sales and you're unable to access your truth, and you are on the phone and you're unable to get to the bottom of the truth of the moment with that person and be present, that's another thing that can be impacted by losing your voice psychologically. Now, I want to talk about the time that I actually was in a relationship that was quite toxic, and I was being told to shush. I was told that I'm too noisy. I'm being told that I'm too much, and that I needed to keep it down because I was taking up too much space. Now, this triggered an old wound of mine, being an ADHD child who was suppressed with medication, with being kicked out of classrooms, being told to sit on my own, being put in isolation, having a desk put outside the room, not even allowed to enter classrooms because of the way I was expressing myself. It was called disruptive. And then to be fed medication for from 8 years old to the age of 16, that meant that I was suppressing a part of myself, which meant that whatever real truth that I had wasn't allowed to be expressed. And so I suffered for a very long time with not being able to have a voice. Now, because that happened in my childhood, and that's what caused me to always feel constricted, I always felt this pain in my throat, I always had this idea of the most charismatic version of myself that I could be, but I was unable to access that because of Ritalin, and I was unable to get into that version of me that was free and open and expressive and charismatic and able to speak. So that passed on later on in life when my traumas from that part of my life then affected parts of my life in the future, which is relationships that are toxic, where someone starts saying that you're too much again and triggering that belief of I'm too much, or I'm not enough, or if I express my truth, I'm going to be isolated, or I'm going to be abandoned, or I'm going to be cast outside of the tribe. So how does this impact my life as a voice coach and someone whose main value is to freely express and have freedom of expression? Well, quite a lot, because if I'm psychologically blocked from expression and not able to speak, not able to open my voice to sing, not able to be able to put myself out there and speak to people and be extroverted and open and entertaining and trying to be funny, and not doing events and not doing my improv and not doing my comedy nights and not going and doing any singing anywhere, that is a suppression of who I truly am and who you truly are. Because everyone has a right to speak and everyone has the ability to sing. It's just the sustained sound which you can connect to through your breath. Now, luckily and fortunately, I've had an acting training where the voice was one of the main foundations of the training. I went to the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama. I've been given a extensive amount of tools and exercises that I use on the daily to be able to keep my voice technically trained and my breath centered and get myself into a grounded state, which allows me to feel more comfortable and rely on the technique. But the psychological aspect still exists. There can still be a block to me being open and expressive and singing, even when my body is technically warmed up. And what I do to break through that is to break through that cringe barrier, break through that fear of being judged, break through that fear of being, if I speak my truth, then I'm going to be cast aside. And what it came down to was really aligning myself with my values and making sure that those values were the things that I centered everything in my life around, that if my values aren't being respected and I'm not respecting myself enough to live by my values, then I'm actually putting myself in a really bad situation, which is the worst feeling. That it's worse to feel bad in this than it would be to break through the other side and fully express. So what did I do when I psychologically felt that my voice had gone? Well, what was showing up in my life was that I stopped speaking to people. I felt a fear that if I spoke to certain people, then I would be left or abandoned. And it came down to that fear that held me back from being able to do things. What else did it do? It stopped me from speaking on camera. It basically gave me this block that I was not good enough. My self-esteem took a hit, which meant that I wasn't able to put myself out there. I wouldn't put myself on camera, and I wasn't putting myself in a situation that would actually be optimal for me to be successful and progress with my work. And there's only so much I could take of being told to shush. And usually, throughout my life, if someone has told me to be quiet or has said to me that I'm making too much noise or I'm over-expressing or I need to behave or whatever it is, and I have to fit into a really small box, my immediate response to that, which is probably a trauma response, is to double down, go louder, and know that no one can actually shut me up. No one has the right to tell me to not speak. I believe that everyone has the right to speak. Everyone. And you have the right to speak. And I believe I have the right to speak and sing. Because at the end of the day, if you're not expressing, you are suppressing. And suppression is the fastest way to depression. If you're not expressing yourself to your fullest and most highest version of you and capabilities, then you're living by someone else's rules who has been told to shut up too much. And usually the people that are telling you to shush are the ones that were told to shush most of all when they were growing up. So they're just projecting their shit onto you. And when I realized that it's more of a them problem than it is a me problem, because that there's a difference between being told to shush because you're expressing and a difference to being told to shush because you are being not courteous to those around you. For example, where I'm staying right now, I wouldn't start singing at 9, 10 p.m. outside the front of the house because I have courtesy that people are going to be sleeping and I don't want to wake them up. And that's just a standard common sense thing. There are certain situations where you have to keep the noise down for respectful reasons and courteous reasons to, be courteous to the people that need that quiet. But when it's in your own space, when it's in your own home, when it's in your own time, in your own car, when you're just in your own time and space, and they happen to be part of that person telling you to shush, it's not acceptable. It's not acceptable, because to suppress a part of yourself and lose your voice because of that, because you would outshine that person, or it would look like they would be worried that you were better than them, or whatever it is, their insecurity and fear that they're projecting onto you, that is what I believe would help me get through it, is that this isn't a me thing, this is a them thing. And I've had multiple calls with women, specifically Muslim women, who have grown up with that same suppressed voice feeling. They get the knot in the throat. They don't have the psychological strength and voice to speak what they really feel. And they break through that. Even just in a audit call with me, they're able to express how they feel. And I receive it with no judgment. I'm like, fully understand, I get it. And the correlation between an ADHD child being suppressed for being able, wanting to express and be themselves, is very similar to a Muslim woman growing up who's not allowed to express because she's been told to be quiet, because women aren't supposedly allowed to speak and have their own opinions and thoughts and feelings and able to put themselves in a situation that would be similar to a man. So this is what I've been told in my calls. And it doesn't just have to be those two situations. There are multiple situations in life where you psychologically lose your voice because someone is telling you that you have to stay small, and they're pushing you down, and they're keeping you quiet because their fear of you being fully you dims them. And when I realize, and when you realize that that's a them problem, and that you are here to fully express, to fully put yourself out there, that is when you break through that barrier. And that is what I work with the people I work with. We break through those barriers of cringe, judgment, those fears that allow you to become the most expressive person you can be. And if you have never expressed at a 10, how do you know where your mid-range is that is going to be acceptable in certain situations where you have to be respectful of people around? And if you're always dimming yourself, how are you ever going to show your true personality? How are you ever going to show people who you really are if you are always holding back? So I've been through this. I've lost my voice multiple times in my life because of the suppression that led to depression. And the only way out of those depressions was to express, to sing, to do poetry, to say things that I wanted to say out loud, to write poetry and speak it, to write letters and then speak them out loud so that I could feel them. Because reading in your head's great, but when you actually add sound and the voice to those things, you're actually resonating and putting it out there and vibrating and sending out a frequency. That is what I work with. That is how I work with people. That's how I've how I've worked on myself to get through this barrier and break through to the other side. So if that resonates with you, drop a like, subscribe, follow over on the Instagram as well, and tune in for the next video.